So I had no idea Ravi was doing this. In the process, we have lost 15 minutes of our panel time. So as I told you, I thought the best use of the time would be if we went across those three areas of assessment, curriculum and pedagogy, and on each, I have a few points. They're not comprehensive or anything like that, but I think they're key points for each of these topics. So I'll tell you what the topics are under assessment, and then if the panel, then we go around the panel with, I know it's a bit unfair that you have to sort of react on the spot, but whatever comes into your head, if we go across that and then open the floor for the assessment discussion, and then see what we can do between all of us. So the first topic, which is the future of assessment, and why did I take assessment first is because, in fact, many of you mentioned during the break that assessment actually determines the rest of the system. It drives the system. So it's all very well for me to say that, give them this free environment, etc. But if the exam system doesn't support that, then you as teachers, after the 9th standard, have really no option but to switch back to the old system. And there's not much I can do about that either. However, as I said, the need for that to change is, I think, gradually seeping in, and change in education, happens very, very slowly. So, first point is that current assessment systems look for identical responses from learners. Okay, you'd agree that given a question, you're actually looking for something called the answer. If you write the answer, then you get 1. If you don't write the answer, you get a 0. Why is that done? That's done because if 300 million children are being examined, then you need to have at least 20 million examiners. And 20 million examiners have to be given this binary choice that if it is this, then give 1 mark, if it is not. So the system gets dumbed down because of the requirement of identical responses. That's one point. The second point in assessment is that open-ended questions cannot be asked in such assessment because we need a new assessment system. If you ask an open-ended system, you will end up with the same thing, that if you are an examiner, your view might be different from another examiner's view. How will we match the two? Use of the internet should be allowed during assessment. I think I spoke about that in my talk, so I'd like to hear some of the views on that. Fair evaluation of such a new assessment system is not possible by human examiners. Now, it's easy to say, but then what do we do about it? I can't think of how any human examiner system can handle such open-ended things. And therefore, more research on automated and continuous evaluation of open-ended questions and tasks is needed. These were some of the thoughts. So, but I just wanted to add one more thing before I open it out, is that while I said that I don't see how you can have a human-based assessment system for open-ended questions, but there are subjects. See, for example, if you are teaching music and you want to examine someone for whether they can play the violin, now you're not going to ask questions like how many strings does a violin have? That's pointless. You're going to simply say play it. And then you'll have the same open-ended problem, that who's the judge who's listening and is there a standard norm? But they seem to have solved it, many of these subjects. So maybe there could also be a kind of peer review or whatever which might solve this problem. So with that, your views on assessment. So shall we go around from this side?
Assessment has been an area of problem, especially in our kind of education system. And one of the reasons is that, as I was discussing with you earlier, that we assess on the basis of what we have taught. So basically we want to find out whether they have memorized what we have taught or not. Rather, it needs to be done the exactly opposite, which is called the backward design. I also agree with you that there are some challenges when it comes on implementation of most of the ideas which you have discussed with us in terms of assessment. Like, for example, whether we can introduce internet in the examinations or not, only time will tell. But there are certain things which we as educators can do, and I strongly feel about it. One is that we can definitely make assessment a burden-free journey for the students. Not doing assessments the way maybe we are doing at the moment of 2 exams, 3 exams, 4 exams, but something which is a continuous, more dynamic, and more diverse form of assessment, which includes the requirement of the board or the curriculum, but at the same time, it can also cater internally to the kind of suggestions which Professor Mitra has given to us at the same time. So it needs to be a continuous process, and we need to create a culture in the school where not only students are allowed to ask questions, but there is a culture where they are taught what open-ended questions are. That is something which I personally feel is very, very important.
Okay. Let's take all the comments before we open out to the floor.
While I'm going to spend time on all the aspects of assessment, I want to kind of detail a bit on the open-ended questions. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what are we assessing? If you're assessing subjects of the past, history, geography, etc., or steam engines, then yes, we have to assess content. But if you're going to assess a life or a product, who I'm calling the student, that we have to put out in the future, then we can't assess content. It has to be skills. Because technology is not only changing in unimaginable speed, it's also going to areas that we don't understand. So we need to put students out there who will have adaptability, who will take on challenge without having anxiety or breakdowns. Our grade 6 kids are going to definitely compete with robots. Our pre-nursery kids today, by 2035, are going to be living in an AI world. If we are going to be benchmarking the future, then I don't think the kind of assessments we are having today for the 3 hours reading, writing, science, and mathematics is going to work. Clearly it's not going to work. We've moved away, at least in theory, talking about the 4 C's, or the critical thinking, etc., and what Professor Mitra said earlier today, collaboration, communication, and computing, perhaps. So our reading has definitely changed. I mean, just look at a small example of how we read SMS texts. They don't have the vowels, and we can still read the language. Look at the writing has undergone tremendous change. I mean, no longer we're giving marks for good round handwriting the way I learnt it when I went to a St. Joseph's school. And arithmetic is definitely going to become applicability for computer science or computing. Having said that, look at what happened to CBSE. I mean, we had a single text examination across 3 million kids. Somebody leaked it, and we were in a jam. If we had an open book kind of an examination that tested comprehension, ability to deduce, we wouldn't be in a situation like that today. There was some talk about open textbook examination systems or assessments, but we soon gave it away because we don't know how that works. I'm of the genuine belief that we have to move forward. We have to make examination open and then ask the kind of questions, no matter how many times you leak the question, because there's no standard answer. It's about the method that the student will go through. It's the thinking pattern that will determine whether there's a scoring or not. And scoring has to be every step, not the last bottom. So I'm of the complete opinion that we have to go through open methods, whether it's in kindergarten or in high school.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess the purpose of this is also to spark some debate, right? And have a point of view. And I'm going to first start with a word that everyone hears now, which is 21st century skills. And I'm sure everyone knows about 21st century skills and speaks about that. And I've been a fairly active proponent of the word 21st century skills. About a year and a half back, when I went to one of my schools in Bangalore, and I was talking about 21st century skills and talking about it very, very passionately. After that, I had a parent who walked up to me and said, you know what, sir, it all sounds so good, but do you really think that this would work? That there is so much of talk, it's so nice, but really, who's walking the talk? I kind of sheepishly looked at him and said, don't you think we do that? He said, look at our schools, the schools that I went to, the schools that we now go send our kids to, nothing pretty much has changed, right? The infrastructure looks nice, you have smart boards inside, but pretty much is the same kids, the same way of teaching, and the same way of assessing. So really, nothing's really changed. That got me thinking about assessments really, and the question really being, what do tests really test? What do they test? Is it about the potential of the child, or is it about his knowledge on that given subject or that information at that point in time? So it's that point in time, right? It's not about the potential there. And the other thing that got me thinking was about, we talk about marks, and we talk about how well somebody scored. And when you think about somebody getting 75 marks out of 100, we all feel very happy about it, right? In the standardized testing model, and we say